empower young professionals with the knowledge to build a healthier relationship with their money. Welcome to Financial Firsts, where we explore essential financial topics to empower young professionals. Now, in our previous episode, we looked at the milestone of first-time home buying, highlighting the importance of informed decision-making as well as financial planning with experts from Nedbank. Today, we shift our focus to another critical aspect of financial health: student loan management and debt consolidation. Joining me are Dr. Nosipho Mhlanga and Lindokuhle Tau. Now, Dr. Nosipho Mhlanga is a dedicated medical doctor and is known for her multifaceted roles as brand ambassador, content creator, as well as a dedicated health advocate. She has also navigated the complexities of student loans firsthand. Alongside her is Lindo Tau, the head of CVP at Nedbank's Retail and Relationship Banking segment. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Dr. Nosipho, can you please share your journey with student loans and what motivated you to tackle this challenge?
So since I was in grade 4, I would say, I knew that I wanted to be a doctor. That was my dream. That was what I was going to be. But when I was in grade 7, my dad lost his job and my mom was an executive secretary. So by the time I finished matric, as you can imagine, university wasn't really on the financial cards. But my mom did some research because my parents have always been supportive, and she found the Nedbank student loan. So that's how we were like, okay, at least I can get through school. But unfortunately, I didn't make it into medical school firsthand, so I was going to have a very, very long university journey. So I had to do an undergraduate degree in medical sciences first, and that was about 40,000 Rand a year. So at least at that time, it wasn't bad, and I got through that portion of my education journey with Nedbank. So when I finished my medical sciences, medical school was the next journey for me, and we were worried about that because medical school was significantly more expensive than medical sciences. My first year was going to cost 115,000 Rand. So we were worried, but we spoke to our Nedbank broker and they were like, no, it's cool, we'll just extend to your medical degree and then that will be the loan that you pay together. So that's how I made it into medical school. So I only really ventured into student loans because at home we couldn't afford to pay for my school any other way.
Your story has highlighted so many important and essential insights that young professionals need, especially with navigating their finances. Lindo, I'd really love to hear your perspective, especially from a banking perspective. How was your journey with navigating your undergrad studies?
Yeah, it's so interesting how our stories are a bit similar. So my dad lost his job literally a couple of months before I finished my matric. And my mom had saved a bit, and I mean a bit, because obviously, you know, we were expecting that my dad would be there to support her. And what happened is with what she had saved, it was enough to cover for like literally a bit of my first year. And unlike Nosipho's mom, my mom didn't know about student loans. I also didn't know about student loans. So literally in that 3 years, it was tough because mom had to make so many sacrifices. And I remember her actually dipping into her Nedbank credit card. It's so funny that our parents both banked with Nedbank, but yeah, we used the Nedbank credit card quite a lot. And to a point that Nosipho raised earlier about budgeting, I saw my mom literally counting the cents. Literally every month, you know, we have to watch, okay, this is going to pay for this, and now she's a breadwinner. And I think the other thing that that whole period taught me is the power of saving. Because had she not saved when that event took place, we don't know what could have happened in that first year.
During your experience, what were the strategies that you used and you found to be effective with managing your student loans?
So in the beginning, this is now first year after finishing my medical degree, I didn't have a plan. And now, as you can imagine, I mentioned my mom was the breadwinner. Now I was a doctor, so you can imagine who was the new breadwinner. So I had to now put my sister through school, and managing my student loans, that being an extra debit order that was going to come off, was a little difficult because when I was still in school, my mom was managing the loan for me, but when I finished now, I had to take it on. So in the beginning, I really did not have a strategy, I did not have a plan, and most of the time I was in the red at the end of the month because I couldn't pay for all of my expenses, my responsibilities, and my loan. But thankfully, later on, again, having spoken to my Nedbank broker because they were seeing that something's happening with you paying this loan, they said a great way for me to manage it would be budgeting. So that's when I actually sat and started making a budget for my finances.
Now, I want to know, how did you end up paying for that loan? Were you continuing to work after you studied? How was that journey in repaying the loans and the credit card that your mother used as well?
So I think that whole skill of learning how to budget, she started actually paying it off as I was studying. I mean, by the time I completed my studies, I really didn't have much to pay back because she had really, learned the skill of budgeting. And to Nosipho's point, Nedbank has very good relationship bankers. And if you are open and you actually have the conversation with them to say, I'm struggling with my debt, how can I manage it better? They are there to actually assist you. So I didn't have any struggles after I completed my studies.
Dr. Nosipho, can you share with us a significant moment during this journey with your student loans that was either particularly challenging or rewarding for you?
So rewarding is who I am today because I wouldn't be me or me in my career without Nedbank. I'm so grateful for that. But again, going back to the beginning of my journey where I was struggling to manage my student loans, when I started working, naturally my student loan interest rates, I believe, was lower when I was still a student because I didn't have a job. But when I started working, I think the interest went a little bit higher. So they notified me that I would need to start paying a different amount for my student loan. So at this time, again, being the breadwinner, I looked at that amount and I was just like, oh, I was already struggling with the smaller amount. I don't know how I can manage with this bigger full amount. So I spoke to them and I asked, I can't afford this amount. Is there any way that we can negotiate a rate that I can afford? And they were able to come to me and say, okay, what can you afford? We met halfway, and every year until I believe, actually only last year, was when I was able to pay my student loan at its full amount. Because as you can imagine, that medical school loan added such a big amount.
Linda, I really want to ask you about what do you think students think about student loans in general? Do you think they feel pressurized to pay off these debts and that it's a debt that maybe they think they can't handle?
Yeah, so personally, I think a student loan is actually great because, Nosipho's story is proof that, it actually works, right? So at Nedbank, we have a concept that we refer to called responsible borrowing. And in responsible borrowing, we talk about two different types of debt. So there's good debt and then there's bad debt. So let me start with good debt. So good debt is the kind of debt that actually results in some sort of an income at a future state, right? And bring it back to what we're talking about, student loan, right? Student loan is for your education, and education actually does result in you at some point, earning an income. And the power about good debt is that at a point, it actually means that the income that you have is more than the cost of the debt that you actually took. So that's good debt. Whereas bad debt is the kind of debt that you actually can't afford. It's the kind of debt that mostly originates from bad financial decisions or lifestyle choices that are not really, working to grow you. I think generally student loans are great, and I don't think it should be looked at as something that brings pressure onto you, because you need to look at it from a future perspective. What is it going to bring back for me?
Throughout your journey, how did managing your student loans affect your personal financial goals and your plans?
So when I was still starting out now post-school, I had this little car that I was driving from home to Soshanguve when I was at school. And that car for me was my dad's car It was a mission, and I think I've cried more than 5 times on the road with that car. I once got stuck in the middle of the night with that car when the tire burst. So when I finished my medical degree, my first thing was I need to get a new car, right? So now, being again new money and unrealistic, this is me on Porsche Macan, Porsche one. I was looking at really expensive cars, but obviously I dialed it down and eventually got a car that I could afford. But after the car, again, because I just felt like, oh, I'm a professional now, I'm working, and there's this idea that everybody has that doctors have money. And doctors, unless if you're a specialist, don't have money. So I also didn't realize that I didn't have money. So now I wanted to buy a house, right? So now I've just bought this car. Now I'm thinking I want a house. So now I was looking at this 2 million rand house in Northcliffe. And I was like, oh, I can definitely afford this house. Oh, it's beautiful. I went for 5 viewings. And then my mom sat me down and she was just like, can you really afford these things? Because they're telling me they're increasing the student loan amount again. Can you afford a house? And then that's when I was just like, oh, actually, maybe I'm being unrealistic. I don't have that much money. I can't afford a house, you know? So having that debt that I had to accumulate to get into the position that I am now, I realized that I won't be able to do certain things at a certain time, which now with maturity I've realized is actually okay. There'll be a point in time when I'll be able to do those things. So yes, having to pay off my debts has impacted my ability to do things for myself, but I know that I'm only able to do things for myself because of that debt. So that's why it doesn't make me feel any negative way, but I know that in the future when I do eventually pay off all my student loans, then I can get a 5 million rand house, hopefully. Wishful thinking.
The best story. Absolutely love it. And also the lesson on timing, which is just beautiful. I'd really like to find out more about what is the Nedbank student loan.
Okay. So at Nedbank, we have a student loan offering that helps you pay for your, not just studies. So we don't just say studies, but it actually pays for your fees, your books, and even accommodation. So if you're not staying at home and maybe you relocated from KZN and you're studying at UJ, it will pay for your rest, right? And it's split into 2. So there's a student loan for someone who is a full-time student. And normally how that would work, which is what I assume Nosipho actually got, is you need to sign up with a guarantor. And your mom was the guarantor. As you were speaking, I thought that your mom was the guarantor, because the guarantor would then kind of agree that they'll pay small interest while you are studying. And she will carry it until you are ready to pay off the debt, right? So there's that. And what's great with that is that it's actually also linked to your academic performance. So the better you do with your academic results, the better the interest rate, the better the charges of that loan. Then the second type of loan we have is the student loan for part-time students. So you are working, but you also want to study, but you can't afford to, pay the full amount. So you get a student loan for that. Again, benefit still is that having a student loan is actually much cheaper than getting any other loan. And a lot of people actually don't know that, Others, like my mom, got a credit card, right? Which is much more expensive than an actual student loan. Even getting like a personal loan, much more expensive than a student loan. So a student loan was designed with the right type of interest rate fitting for students. So yeah.
It is amazing. I like how Nosipho you are just nodding. You are completely agreeing from your experience as well.
I'm also surprised because I didn't know it was linked to academic performance. I know they asked you to send your academic record.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was for. I just thought they wanted to make sure you were actually still in school and not failing. I didn't know that it made my interest rate better.
So my question is, especially for young professionals, what happens when they can't find a job, or at the end they find it hard or cannot pay back that loan?
So this is where the guarantor comes in, right? Because the guarantor is the one that says, it's fine, I'll pay off that smallanyana interest until you are able. So they don't even pressurize you to say, you have to pay it in 3 years' time. Like, until you are able to pay it, your guarantor will take care of that minimal interest, right? But on the other hand, if you are working and you are struggling, there's actually a product called Credit Life. I'll give a personal example. When I started working, I joined a particular organization through the graduate program. And within, I think after a year, there were retrenchments in that organization. And some of my peers were retrenched. Now think about it, right? You've just moved from, I'm making an example of KZN again. You moved from KZN, you're moving to Johannesburg. Obviously, now you need a place to stay. You probably took a credit card so you can buy a bed, and you also need a car to travel to work. And now there's retrenchment and you still have the student loan. So Credit Life would be there to cover them for all that debt, including the student loan. So I think that's also one of the products that people don't really know about, but it's actually quite helpful because there's so many unforeseen, events that take place in our lives. So, yeah.
So looking back at your journey with your student loans, is there anything that you wish you would have known or that you could have done differently in managing your student loans?
Something new that I'm about to discover about, like you mentioned, is the debt consolidation, which I actually still don't know much about. And that's something that I really would be interested in because my student loans, even though Nedbank gave me another loan for my medical school, it is technically like two separate loans. So I would be interested to find out how I can make that better for myself. But before, I don't think there is anything specifically new that I could say I would have learned, minus the budgeting to manage my student loans. But I am willing to learn something new because I know that will help me manage my finances.
Nedbank does offer debt consolidation, but I think I just want to speak about, the importance of managing a good credit profile, right? Because debt consolidation normally takes place when you are at a point where you feel like, I can't anymore. So managing your debt and paying it on time is very important. Second thing is I would advise young professionals to always ensure that the limits that they go for are actually equal to what they need. Because as banks, we will give you 100,000 credit card. Do you really need 100,000 credit card? Because all that does is it opens up doors for you to get into that bad debt I was talking about, right? So always manage your limits to what you need. And then the third thing is never take another type of debt to pay off another debt. So in other words, keep your student loan a student loan. Don't go and take a credit card to pay a student loan. But this is where debt consolidation then comes in. So you've got different types of debt that you feel are like difficult to manage in terms of there's just too many credit providers, there's different interest rates, there's different service fees. So what Nedbank does is you can go there and present to them, these are the different, debt that I do have, and I want to consolidate them. So they take that into one. So they basically pay off your debt, right? And then they take everything and make it into one. The benefits of that are the interest rate is a single interest rate, and most of the time, if your credit worthiness is good, then it's reduced, right? And also you then have a single fee because now you're not paying different credit providers. And on top of that, it's just easier to control it now because you're only dealing with one credit provider. So definitely Nedbank does do that, but I always advise young professionals to use their bankers. To your earlier point, speak to your banker because sometimes you don't have to take debt consolidation. Sometimes it's about moving things around within your different credit providers in order for you to manage it better.
In your opinion, what do you think some of the misconceptions are that young professionals have about student loans, and how do you think they can overcome them?
So the main thing, I think now, firstly, I feel like there's a bit of an epidemic, pandemic, whatever you want to call it, of people no longer wanting to go to school. The influencer effect, where everyone is like, oh, people on TikTok and Instagram are making huge checks just from sitting in front of their cameras, so why do I have to go to school? And on top of that, if you're sitting at home where your parents can't afford to send you to school, then you're just like, why must I take a loan because I can be famous on TikTok? Or why must I take a loan anyway because loans are bad or debt is bad? And I can understand that perspective, but it only really makes sense for you to not pursue a future that you want because you have something that you can lean on. And for the majority of South Africans, that isn't an option. Your parents are not rich, you don't have a trust fund, so going to school is something that I'll always advocate for. So as much as a student loan is debt, a student loan is necessary debt for a lot of everyday South Africans. So I just really would like people to take away from this that even though you could, yes, in the future, struggle with managing this debt, it's still a worthy or a necessary debt to take. So I would definitely say student loans are not a negative thing, again, because it's paying for your education. You're not going on a trip to Dubai or whatever with money you don't have. You're investing in an education, investing in yourself, and the more you better yourself and your skills, in the future you'll be able to use those skills to make more money, to upskill yourself and do better for yourself.
Yeah.
Nosipho, you spoke about that. I keep coming back to that relationship that keeps happening when you talk about how things are going with your loans as well. And I'm pretty sure that the both of us are very, very curious to find out what are the pros and the cons of consolidation.
Yeah, so I did touch on them a bit earlier. So, I mean, the main ones are the fact that you can get a reduced interest rate. Number two is what I also mentioned is the service fee. Service fee is lower, so obviously you are saving money because now you're not paying different credit providers. And then the third one is that control is much better because now you are only dealing with a single service provider. What I'd say is a drawback about it is the fact that if you don't have a good credit profile, it might actually be worse. So it would be better to actually stay with your different credit providers instead of trying to consolidate it, because number one, the amount that you qualify for in terms of consolidation might be actually not sufficient to cover the other debt, and also the interest rate charged might be a bit higher, so it might not work for you. So that's why I'm always referring young professionals to the banker, because the banker can then look at your situation and advise which solution is best.
Dr. Nosipho, you mentioned so many amazing things about you learning how to manage your student loans through doing budgets and learning the different techniques to manage it. Now, Lindo, let's speak about how young professionals can get any assistance if they're not sure how to manage the debt that they have.
It goes back to what I mentioned about relationship banking, right? But I think let me just go deeper into talking about the Nedbank private clients offering for young professionals, specifically for young professionals, which is actually given at a 50% discount monthly fee. So young professionals get, that private client, offering with all the lifestyle benefits, including traveling benefits, etc. But the biggest thing about it, and why I personally love being part of that, banking with Nedbank from that perspective, is that relationship banker. Because that relationship banker is equipped to give you advice. They are equipped to deal with all your banking queries. They are equipped to even deal with your credit applications. So they literally do everything for you. So I just love Nosipho's stories because she just proves everything that I'm saying right. The fact that her and her mom could continuously go to the relationship banker and say, can we negotiate? That's what they are there for, because I don't know if you know, Nedbank's tagline is money experts who do good. And that's what we're about. We're really about, empowering the individual to manage their money better, So we have trained people who are skilled to actually help the young professional manage their money better, assist them with debt management and making the right decisions.
Dr. Nosipho, sorry to put you on the spot here, but I really want to find out from you, with the story that you shared with us about your experience and now sitting with Lindo, how does it feel for you? Is it like a full circle moment because you're still continuing as a professional? How does this conversation empower you and also your experience that you had?
It's so exciting. When they approached me for this conversation, I didn't think they knew that I had Nedbank student loan because Poppy Act. But I really was very excited to be a part of the conversation because I was just like, I don't think that they know that this is actually my story. And they did good with me. Nedbank really did good with me because there's no way I could have figured out a way to get to school. And for me, my mom wouldn't have been able to get a credit card to afford those exorbitant fees, especially with medical school. So it is a really full circle moment, and I hope that it encourages people who do want to go to school, people who do want to further their futures, to be encouraged that it is possible and that it's worth it. I think it's important to remind them again that student loan debt is good debt and it's worth it. Especially if you want to invest in your future, you should do it because you could be like me in your future and the good version of me in your future. Not my bad financial decisions, but the good ones. So I'm really excited to be a part of this conversation, and it makes me proud to be able to share my story, because even though it's not a story of riches from when I started, at least I'm now in a much better position, and it's because of the good that Nedbank has done for me.
Your story is one that many of us can relate with, and we are really happy to have heard it, because now it makes us feel as though we have people who understand, and people have walked in our path and understanding how Nedbank and the student loan works and how it can help young professionals move forward. So to close off, I'd really like to ask you the question: what advice would you have for young professionals, especially with your experience, what you have been through, and what you've learned also from this conversation?
So what I'd say is, if you want to pursue a future, you want to have an education and you can't afford it, take that student loan. We've already seen that it's a success, and I really hope that it does encourage people to pursue school and education even if they don't come from affluent backgrounds. And again, budgeting is really important, because managing your money as an adult is such a difficult thing, and there'll always be things that you want, there'll always be more that you think you need, but sometimes you always have to, not sometimes, actually all the time, you need to live within your means, and you need to remember what you have, because if you manage your money well, that money can make even more money for you. So that's really important for me. And I think, again, I've taken from this conversation the importance of having a bank that actually cares, because I think if I was in a different situation, maybe I wouldn't have been able to manage my student loans, maybe we would have struggled more, and maybe I wouldn't be happy to have this conversation. But I'm so happy to share because I've had a positive experience, because I had a bank that supported me. So I hope that this inspires people to do more, and it also inspires them to speak if they need help to their banker. Be honest about your situations, because a lot of us hide our finances because we want to act like we're on top of them, but you can't hide your finances from your banker, because when they open and say, "What's your name?" they can see that minus. So just be honest about your situation.
Lindo, Dr. Nosipho has said so much, and her story has inspired us. And what I like is how yours contrasts and also is very similar. Now, with your work experience and your personal experience, what advice would you have for young professionals who are considering making this debt decision?
Okay. So I think for me, it's not just about student loans, because today we were talking about student loans, right? It's about good debt. So understanding the difference between good debt and bad debt. And I mean, we know that there's so much written about debt and how to manage your money, you know, and I don't think we spend enough time actually reading and understanding financial concepts. You know, it's not just about manage your money and that's it. There's financial concepts you need to understand. You need to understand how compound interest, for example, works, you know. So I think back to basics, start with the reading, you know. And nowadays it's so easy. You just go to the internet and find out, you know, what are the key things I need to do in order to manage my money better. And then the second thing is, I'd like to emphasize that do not allow your expenses to surpass your income, because that's like the biggest cause of bad debt, right? When you are spending and living beyond your means. And then the last thing I'd like to mention is what Nosipho referred to when she was talking about budgeting. In that budget, you know, include savings. Save something, even if it's 350, which is what I did. You know, I joined a group of friends and we started saving 350 every single month, and you'll be shocked, you know, at what that does at the end of the year. When it's December and now you want to buy a gift, you've got like 6,000 Rand that you can buy gifts with, you know. And on top of that, if you're saving it and putting putting it into an interest-bearing account. You're earning interest on top of that as well. So yeah, I think with the story that I shared earlier with my mom, it's also proof that saving and having an emergency fund will actually help you in the long run.
Wow. Dr. Nosipho, Lindo, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your stories. I know that there are so many young professionals that will learn from the insights that you shared with us today. Join us next time as we continue to explore essential financial topics. In our next episode, we will be delving into avoiding the debt cycle, successful side hustles, and how Nedbank can help you in achieving your dreams. Until then, take charge of your finances and stay informed.